Good morning, kiddos. A quick word from your sponsor, that would be me. If our republic is going to survive, it is imperative that conservative Christians articulate the importance of their beliefs to their fellow citizens. So Dad here is on a mission to use evidence-based reasoning and historical evidence to articulate the relevance of Christianity in the secular world and to demonstrate that our constitutional republic is the best form of government ever devised by man. So be sure to click on the link at the end of this article or rant to get these subscriptions for free. Your subscribing is very, very helpful to the cause. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the rant. It seems apropos to begin this rant with a quote from Spanish-American philosopher George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Given the interest in certain segments of society in a socialist revolution, this seems to be a good time to cover a high level a comparison of the French Revolution to the American Revolution. The interesting thing about these two revolutions is that they happened at about the same time. The French Revolution occurred between 1789 and 1799, while the American Revolution occurred between 1775 and 1783. What was striking about these two revolutions is that the ideological underpinnings were in diametric opposition to each other, and the results of these two revolutions couldn't have been more different. For these reasons, there is much to be learned from studying these two revolutions. It is actually amazing that the core curriculum of any study of history doesn't include a comparison of the American and French revolutions. That said, let's get into it. We'll begin with our discussion of the American Revolution. The foundational principle that drove the American Revolution was equal treatment under the law. The battle cry was no taxation without representation. The constitutional principle was that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The American system was recognized that due to original sin, man is imperfectible by man. Inherent within the U.S. Constitution were the following attributes. The first one, 4 attributes: explicit recognition of God, the Creator; explicit recognition of individual rights that cannot be altered by the state. Those would be called inalienable rights given to us by who? The Creator. The third, explicit recognition that men are to be treated equally under the law. Now, inherent in this is the understanding that men are not equally endowed in the areas of talent, ambition, desires, or needs, but they are equally created to be treated equally. And finally, explicit recognition of original sin, and that is the fact that man is imperfectible by man. The American model is that of limited government. The U.S. Constitution grants the federal government very limited rights and duties. They are set forth in a really short document we call the Constitution. All duties not listed in that document are left to the individual states. Now, there was an understanding at that time that there's a moral role for churches, community, and tradition to help those that fall short. The government had no role in providing material assistance to the citizens. The role of assisting citizens belonged to the citizens themselves, not the government. Inherent in the American model is the understanding of the nature of man. Again, think original sin. The founders understood that man craves power, and as Lord Acton stated, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So to ameliorate against man's maniacal desire for power, a federal system was created that forced the sharing of power. As a result, we have 50 different states, 50 different constitutions, 50 different governors, and 50 different legislators. They set up an executive branch in the form of the presidency, a judicial branch in the form of the Supreme Court, and an executive branch in the form of Congress to further disperse power. The reason this has worked so well, or the principal reason over the last 200 years, is that it's very, very difficult for any one person or group to control all those institutions simultaneously. The beauty of it is that if one branch screws something up, the other branches can fix it. If one state does something stupid, 49 other states can see the results and avoid making that same mistake. It allows the citizens to vote with their feet. If Oregon does something stupid, its residents can move to Idaho. If North Carolina does something great, Michigan look at that and emulate the practices put in place by North Carolina. This is absolutely brilliant on the part of the founders, but it only works if power remains dispersed. If all power becomes centralized in the form of the federal government, then there's no escape for the citizens for bad policy. There's also no ability to experiment to learn what works and what doesn't work. The system allows for 50 states to actually compete against each other. If California overtaxes its businesses, those businesses can move to Texas. If Illinois fails to enforce the law, the citizens can move to Indiana and find safety. Those states that lose businesses and citizens will also lose tax revenue. This provides a financial incentive to improve so as not to lose citizens and tax revenue. It also provides an electoral incentive in that states that lose population will find themselves losing representatives after the next census. Now let's move on and talk about the French Revolution. The French Revolution was very different. The foundational principle that drove the French Revolution was the ability to remake man in his own image. The leadership believed that man could be perfected if only led by the right people. The battle cry of the French Revolution was liberté, égalité, and fraternité. In other words, the French Revolution sought the result of equal outcomes. This differs dramatically from the American Revolution, where the founders understood the limitations of man and that man could never be perfected while here on earth. The objective of the American Revolution was to answer the question, how can man best rule himself given man's limitations of original sin? On the other hand, the French Revolution was all about perfecting man. Now, to do this, the leadership under individuals like Maximilien Robespierre, Jean-Paul Marat, and Georges Danton felt that it would be necessary to reinvent society. Is any of this sounding familiar, by the way? These three individuals were the founding members of a group called the Jacobins. The core belief of the Jacobins was that liberty could only exist where equality replaced privilege. They thought that man could be perfected in virtue, but quickly discovered that man is imperfectible. This is a practical impossibility given the nature of man and the original sin. Inherent within the beliefs of the Jacobins were the following attributes, and they had four also. Explicit recognition that man is perfectible outside of God. Explicit recognition that the state had the right to seize personal property and redistribute the wealth. Sound familiar? Explicit recognition or belief in secularism and the elimination of religion from civic life. And finally, explicit belief in secular education and the elimination of religion from education. So you ask, what was the outcome of these two revolutions? We'll begin with the French Revolution. It is fascinating. The French Revolution's leadership class quickly realized that the only possible chance of perfecting man was to do it by force. And force means, of course, the point of a gun, or in this case, the point of the guillotine. About 17,000 French citizens met the guillotine during the French Revolution. As Joseph Stalin commented some 150 years later, you had to scramble some eggs to make some omelets. The remaking of man meant the de-Christianization of France. To that end, the Jacobins took the following actions. It is pretty unbelievable. They destroyed statues, plates, and iconography from places of worship. They destroyed crosses, bells, and other external signs of worship. They instituted a revolutionary civic cult called the Cult of Reason, and later the Cult of the Supreme Being. They enacted a law in October of 1793 that made all priests and all persons who harbored them liable to death on sight. They confiscated all church property by the state. Churches were sold at public auction. They eliminated the word Sunday from the French language, because that would have implied church. They eliminated the Gregorian calendar, because it was after St. Gregory. It was replaced by the French Republican calendar, which abolished the Sabbath, saints' days, and any reference to church. They eliminated the 7-day work week, and they replaced it with a 10-day work week. It soon became clear that that was unworkable, as 9 days of consecutive work were too many, and international relations were tough to conduct, and everybody else was operating on the Gregorian system 7 days a week. So they changed it back in 1795. 3 bishops and 200 priests were massacred. 16 nuns were guillotined. About 40,000 citizens were executed during the French Revolution, including 17,000 by guillotine, including the leading Jacobins themselves, Marat, Robespierre, and Danton, as well as the French King Louis the XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, all met the guillotine. The French Revolution ended with the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte and the Napoleonic Wars. The Napoleonic Wars were 12 major European conflicts that resulted in roughly 5 million military and civilian deaths that finally ended in Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo at the hands of the hated British. So that was quite an outcome. The American Revolution had a drastically different outcome. There was no major attempt to remake man or eliminate religion. The central government was weak by design. People were largely free to practice religion as they saw fit. And they practiced religion with a fervor as they saw fit. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont were predominantly Calvinists. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, they were primarily Presbyterians and Quakers. Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, essentially the South, primarily Episcopalians, Baptists, Catholics, and Methodists. The American founders' recognition of original sin, the need to disperse power, and the freedom of religion has resulted in the world's longest-running constitution at 250 years now. It's also resulted in a country that has been the world's undisputed hegemon for at least the past 80 years. America's constitutional republic possesses a three-part formula. Constitutional republic, free market economics, and the Judeo-Christian moral code. The Jacobins replaced the tyranny of monarchy with the tyranny of the Jacobins. So they didn't have a constitutional republic. The Jacobins attempted to implement communism before Karl Marx invented communism. They tried to centralize the economy and redistribute the wealth. Of course, it failed miserably, as it always does. And finally and fatally, they tried to eliminate the moral code. They outlawed religion generally and Christianity in particular. The French Revolution ended in death and destruction and the replacement of one tyranny for another. They swapped King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette for Napoleon Bonaparte. The resulting 12 Napoleonic Wars marked the gradual beginning of the end for the French Empire. Let me close with this thought. Consider current events in the United States and how they mirror the events that led to the French Revolution. Consider the destruction of historical artifacts, art, and statues. Consider the current defacement of churches. Consider the leftist elites' changing of historical dates from using the dating of AD and BC to CE and BCE. Consider the attempts by several states to remove the tax-exempt status of the church. Consider the removal of religious symbols from public places like schools, crosses at cemeteries, or war memorials. As King Solomon once observed, nothing is new under the sun. We've seen this before. The only question is whether enough right-thinking people are willing to follow the advice of the late William F. Buckley Jr., which I paraphrase, be willing to stand athwart history and yell stop at a time when no one else is inclined to do so, or to have much patience with those who so urge it. This seems like a good time to close with peace out, Imago Dei.